Today we are talking with Chloe Pott. She's a three-time Marketo champion. She's going to walk us through how to connect data systems, shift campaigns faster without burning people out, rebuilding trust and reporting. Chloe, what's the one element people consistently underestimate during a migration?
I think people underestimate the amount of work that needs to be done in the drawing board. So in the planning phase, before you lift up your sleeves and actually do the migration, you need to have, what are you going to move? What's going to stay behind? Where are they going to move to? At one of my clients, I moved from HubSpot to Marketo, and we had to transform all their data from, for example, they had US and the Marketo instance had United States, or the acquiring company had customer versus the acquirer had client as their account type. So there was all of this planning and mapping that had to be done before we actually moved and touched anything. That's one of the surprising things that I think people underestimate.
Hi everyone. Today we are talking with Chloe Pott, founder and lead consultant at Pocket Nibbles Consulting. She is an independent marketing ops and martech consultant, and honestly, one of the calmest forces you can bring into a messy Slack. She has led ops across Lookalike, Localize, Datadog, Nextthing, and Nablon. She's a three-time Marketo champion. She heads the European chapter of the Mops community, shaping what ops look like outside the typical US definition. What I love about Chloe is a mix of deep martech expertise and real empathy. It's a kind that keeps teams steady while big migrations and complex projects are happening. So today, she's going to walk us through how to connect data systems, shift campaigns faster without burning people out, rebuilding trust and reporting. Plus, she'll share a little bit about the creative and gamified approach she brought to Mops last month. Welcome to the show, Chloe.
Thank you for having me, Alok. I'm excited to be here.
So let's jump right in, Chloe. I want to talk about systems, data, and the foundation, of scalable marketing operations. Let's start with how. A lot of ops teams today are wrestling with fragmented CRMs. I see this all the time, where the maps and analytic tools and the data does not line up. Nobody trusts the story that marketing is trying to tell. Now, Chloe, you have connected global systems at Nablon and Nextthing, and more recently across your consulting clients. So let me start here. When you walk into a new org, what's your framework for getting the core systems connected and creating a single vision of the truth that both sales and marketing believe in?
That's a great question. It's one of the first things I do, whether I'm going into a client situation or when I was in-house. A lot of people probably do this too, is I look, I learn, and I look, and I research. I try and make friends outside of the Mops team, because frequently in my situation, when I've been in-house, I've been the only Mops person, so I haven't had anyone else to bounce ideas off of. But I like to go find cheerleaders in other departments that are similar to marketing ops, so sales ops, customer ops, product ops, and get their perspective and their point of view of how things are set up. Of course, I do talk to the marketing teams. I'm not ignoring them at all. But that's really the first thing that I do, is I try to get a lay of the land. When I've joined in-house as marketing ops, frequently there isn't any documentation because there's startups and early scale-ups. So you have to have these interviews and talk to these people to be able to make that documentation to show you what the map is, so that you can then start making decisions on what to do and how to do them.
That's a great perspective, Chloe. You talked a little bit about the data and talking with the back-end teams, and then working with startups and what that means, right? One thing I know with startups is that you cannot slow down, right? Because, they want to move fast. That's what they're known for. How do you keep data clean, in that environment without slowing the business down? If I think about it, everyone talks about data hygiene, but in the real world, where campaigns are running in warp speed and teams are stretched, governance is usually something that slips, right? You said no documentation, right? You have run global operations where clean data had to hold up daily. So I would love to learn from you, what rules, automations, or habits have actually worked for you to keep data clean at scale without making marketers feel like they're walking on eggshells.
It's not easy. It also depends on what size of a company you're going into. The smaller companies who may not yet have an MAP in place, or who have just recently put one in place, may not have those foundations already there to help with the data hygiene. So if your marketing team is already running campaigns and they're completely independent, I would check out the point of entry of all the data. It's usually form submits. So upon form submit, do we have pick lists? Are those pick lists standardized? Do they map to the CRM? I try and put frameworks in place that allow marketers to have fun within that frame, and say you can do whatever you want on your form, but if you have industry, country, revenue size on your form, these are the fields you need to play with. So I would pay more attention to the new data that's coming in and how that's standardized, and so that you're not slowing down the marketing team from doing anything while they're continuing to grow and scale and run their campaigns. Then on the slower times, take a look at the existing data. And that's when you can set up workflows either in the MAP or CRM, depending, because there might already be some data cleaning happening on the CRM side. But this is a theme that I'll probably bring up many times during our conversation, is communicating and talking to other people. You're not on your own and working in your tunnel, in your own swim lane. That's what I advise against, is don't work in a swim lane. Collaborate with other people so that you're not alone. So that you can rely on other people to help you do things. And maybe the MAP you have is not the best place to do data normalization. Maybe there's a third-party tool. Maybe it's easier in your CRM. But these are things that you might not be able to find out on your own, and you need to collaborate with other people in order to do that, so you don't slow down everyone else.
That's great perspective. I mean, numerous times I've heard, and everybody knows that collaboration and communication is key. And so many times I go into somewhere and I see where those two are completely broken down. People are not communicating, people are not collaborating, they're in their own swim lane. So great perspective, like you bring into how do you make it happen. So thanks for sharing that, Chloe. I want to talk a little bit about the migration. I've been part of multiple migrations, and this is a place where I feel so many ops teams get burned, with acquisitions, platform moves, tech consolidation, you name it, right? Migration can come from any of these scenarios, right? You have handled the tough ones. And more recently, I was reading about you bringing Nablon onto Walter's Bloomberg's existing Marketo and Salesforce setup, and you supported the enablement through a HubSpot to Marketo transition. So from those experiences, Chloe, what's the one element people consistently underestimate during a migration? And how do you protect both the data and the team morale when everything is shifting?
I love this question. I think I think people underestimate the amount of work that needs to be done in the drawing board. So in the planning phase, before you kind of lift up your sleeves and actually do the migration and the hands-on keyboard work. You need to have plans written down on how things are going to move. What are you going to move? What's going to stay behind? Where are they going to move to? What things are going to look like in their new home. At one of my clients, I moved from HubSpot to Marketo because they were acquired by a company that had Marketo. And we had to transform all their data from, for example, they had US and the Marketo instance had United States, or the acquiring company had customer versus the acquirer had client as their account type. So there was all of this planning and mapping that had to be done before we actually moved and touched anything. That's one of the surprising things that I think people underestimate. And the second one is actually preparing the marketers for that change and planning in a couple of weeks of downtime when there's going to be a kind of a gray phase of when they need to stop working in their old system and when can they start working in the new system. I think the more time you spend in that planning and that preparation phase actually leads to an easier next step of let's actually do the migration. That is easy. And a lot of people can do that. But it's the preparation, the planning, determining how things are going to move, where they're going to. And if you're changing systems entirely rather than a one-to-one map, if you're going from one CRM to a different tool, the enablement after. Okay, so we've planned it. We know where things are going. We've moved it. But now do our end users, our sales team, or our marketers, do they know how to even use this new tool? When my client, Nablon, I had to move them from one Salesforce instance to a new Salesforce instance. The new Salesforce instance that they moved into, it wasn't new, it was a different one, was completely structured. The architecture was different than their old system that they knew. So we had an entire enablement session around how do you find your leads? Where are your dashboards? We're going to have to recreate them. What are the fields called in your new instance? So the actual moving things from place one to place two is easy. It's everything outside of the actual move. It's packing your boxes, labeling them, and then unpacking them when you get there.
You're spot on. You're spot on about all of that.
It's surprising. People underestimate a migration.
I know. I have been part of multiple, and I would say almost all of them had some blood tears.
They do.
I want to talk a little bit about the European ops choice, Chloe. You've spent 15 years working across Europe. I've also heard that you're leading the European chapter, the Mops community, and you're working on shaping the Mops Europe. I would love to know how you have seen ops evolve across Europe and what challenges CRM managers, lifecycle leads, and digital product owners facing that don't get talked about enough in the US-centric Mops world.
I think what you just mentioned, the lifecycle managers and the digital product owners, that's the challenge there itself, is in US, Canada, and a lot of the UK, marketing operations is existent. It's there. It's a big part of businesses. It's the backbone of a lot of organizations. But in other parts of Europe, Southern Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, marketing operations is not a common term yet. Marketing ops, and to my point of view and to others I've spoken to recently, in Europe is 10 to 15 years behind what it is in US and Canada. It can be fun. It can also be very frustrating. I've been in Europe in France for 15 years now, and have yet to easily find marketing ops work in a truly European company. And when I have, it is a founding marketing ops role. The job is originally advertised as just a marketing manager or marketing automation manager. So in two companies that I've joined, which have both been European, I was the founding marketing ops hire because they didn't know that they needed it. These were companies that had just recently rolled out CRMs, did not yet have marketing automation. So for me, that's the fun part, is the European world is my oyster. There's a lot of work that can be done. But it's also frustrating because it is very difficult to find a marketing ops role in a European company because companies don't know that they need it yet. Jobs advertised in Europe are not titled marketing operations. They're CRM managers, marketing. There's some marketing automation, but there's a lot of life cycle managers, digital product owner, which I never thought would be considered marketing ops, but I know someone personally, her title is digital product owner. And she was at the Mopsapalooza conference this fall. She is in marketing operations. So it's trying to find that balance between it's fun that it's so far behind, but it's also frustrating at times. And so as you mentioned, I'm one of the three leaders of the European marketingops.com community. And we're trying to build a non-existent community up from the ground up of where are the marketing ops people in Europe when they don't know that they're marketing ops. So I'm having a lot of virtual coffee chats and LinkedIn messages with people who are a lifecycle manager or a CRM manager and trying to convince them. Even RevOps is coming into Europe. But it's fun, the conversations that we're having and trying to build this community to get them excited to have marketing ops as really a theme and a structural backbone of organizations in Europe. And as you build a community, things get exciting. And so we're hoping that in spring of 2027 in Barcelona, we will have our first European marketing community event, marketing operations community event. And it's a long lead time, but we need the time to build the people and build the interest. But we're excited to start planning for that.
Right. We're at the Mops conference in California this year, so who knows? We'll be the first European conference in 2027.
Yeah, I've been to that Mopsapalooza conference 2 years in person, 1 year virtually, and every time that I've been there have been a couple of Europeans who would trickle in. And this year, this past October, we were about 14 or 15 Europeans who were there. I've gotten them on board, and we do virtual chats once a month, every couple of weeks, to keep people talking and keep the community, the networking going. And they've all said to me, Chloe, we need this in Europe. We need something for us to get together and to chat and to network in Europe, because California is great, but it's a long haul. It's a long trip. It's quite costly for Europeans, and the marketing ops are here. They're just hiding behind other titles that we have to find them.
Chloe, you mentioned it's 5 to 10 years. Europe is 5-10 years behind. I would not have guessed that.
I think it's more like 10.
10, more like 10?
Yeah.
I would have thought it's closer to 5, so it's surprising and interesting at the same time. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the marketing campaigns, the speed of the marketing campaigns, because sometimes the speed and quality, kind of goes inverse to each other, right? We all know how campaigns often move slowly, right? Like, too many handoffs, confusing ownership, inconsistent Q&As, inconsistent quality process. Now, you've led many global campaign operations in which teams shift quickly while remaining compliant. So for the folks listening, what's one repeatable workflow or setup that reliably speeds up campaign execution without letting accuracy or brand standards slip?
I think everyone's doing it, but I'm going to go deeply into it. My one tip is template everything. Everything. When I say everything, it's not just your marketing automation like campaign in Marketo or HubSpot. Don't just template that. Template your campaign briefing where you need to gather your content. Template your images in Canva or whatever design tool you're using so that you can just drag and drop, change the text. Template your project management programs so that you know exactly what needs to get done when. Template if your CRM is Salesforce, template your campaign object, your campaign types. Template your post-campaign analysis. You have a document, number of campaign responses, estimated ROI. Template the reports that you build. So all you have to do is change the campaign ID in them. Template everything so that your marketers don't have to think about how to use the technology. They can spend their time thinking about how to promote it, how to grow demand, how to get people interested in their product. And they don't have to worry about the technology. So template everything.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting, like how you kind of think about it, because marketing operations or marketing automation, it's all about speed and efficiency, right? So templatizing everything kind of is, gosh, why did I not think about that? It's actually the perfect way to kind of move faster without slipping quality.
And there's, I would say 95% of marketing campaigns that I've seen my clients and even when I was in-house do are repeatable campaigns.
Yeah.
There's maybe that one thing a year that goes outside of the box and says, okay, well, let's take our template, our marketing automation template, and let's slightly adjust it. But 95% of campaigns can just be reused from a good template at the base. Really sets you up for success going forward.
Interesting. Very cool. Chloe, I want to talk a little bit about the measurement, because that's where a lot of decisions are made, like attribution is a part of it, right? And I've been in a bunch of meetings where there are a bunch of fancy dashboards and reporting, but everyone is still confused. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what to do with all this information that they have in front of them. And you have spoken extensively about reporting frameworks, right? Which tied marketing performance directly to revenue, right? I'm sure those conversations helped shift leadership perspective away from vanity metrics. So, well, I'm curious, what's one metric or reporting setup that really changed, these conversations for you and had a successful outcome for you? And how did you get leadership to trust and act on those reporting metrics or decisions, or the discussions that you had with them?
This is a tough one. Reporting is not easy, and I'm going to preface everything with I do not consider myself a reporting pro. If someone asks me a question about GDPR, I say I'm not a lawyer. Go ask your legal department. What's great is nowadays I'm seeing more and more companies have data analytics teams who sit as a cross function between marketing, sales, and product. And so as a marketing ops professional, what I see helpful when trying to communicate to leadership about attribution and measurement is to speak the same language as them. Leadership might ask about email metrics, but it's not what actually is moving the needle. What moves the needle is revenue, pipeline, and how many opportunities are being converted, like opportunity conversion rate. So do your best to educate yourself on what are the company KPIs, what are the metrics that the leaders at the company are tracking. It's probably revenue and pipeline and churn. Become friends with the data analytics team, understand what they're looking at, and then stay simple. Try not to overcomplicate things. Try not to look at how many MQLs by channel, by region, who converted in the past 3 months. Try and stay as simple as you can, because I think simplicity is undervalued and underrated, and it's actually helpful to communicate to leadership when you're just looking at simple metrics. I'm not talking about vanity metrics, but simple, straightforward metrics: churn rate, revenue, pipeline, and go make friends with the data team.
Yeah, I've seen that. That helps a lot. Getting friends with the analytics team, make sure they are your advocates. Make sure. I've seen in those meetings where CFO or CEO ask you like, "Oh, what these metrics?" But has analytics team even vetted that, right? So I think not only having used their help to come up with the metrics and producing those, but at the same time, if there are metrics that are available in the platform, making sure they have certified it, right? That helps the confidence in those C-level meetings.
Mm-hmm. I really like you mentioned the point of has data vetted this? It would be terrible to show up to a leadership meeting and marketing ops thinks one thing is going to be presented and data presents something entirely different. So going back to that thing about a theme of communication, not only just make friends with the data team, but communicate with them. Make sure that you're having weekly touch points to say, hey, let's check in. What is the data team seeing in terms of trends? And what does that mean to the marketing team? Maybe data is looking at revenue, but they're using an entirely different field than what marketing is looking at for revenue. So making sure that everyone's on the same page and is using the same basis for their metric reporting.
I want to talk a little bit about the experimentation of Chloe and the A/B test, right? More and more, I think, as you said, like a lot of organizations now have data analytics team. I'm seeing a lot of marketers or lifecycle marketers, also have this experimentation mindset these days, like at least, which is good to see. They want more lifecycle testing, they want more A/B experiments, but the ops layer often becomes the bottleneck. I've seen it, I've experienced it. From your vantage point, what's the experimentation rhythm or process you've seen work best in such cases? Something lean enough that teams can run tests weekly without burning out.
That's a great question. It does make me laugh a little bit because as a Mops person, we tend to, I just talked about templatizing everything.
Standardize everything. Yes.
Standardize everything so you don't have to go outside of the box. And there's a lot of growth marketers and growth scientists now that are coming into organizations who their job is to test everything to find the one method that works the best. So how do you work together? It's a challenging balance to find. Since being in consulting, I haven't worked firsthand with any growth people, but when I was in-house, we did have a growth team that sat with the product team, and I recall not coming to an agreement, but having an understanding that there were certain parts of the funnel that were open for testing, that were open for growth testing. And we focused that at very early funnel. It was getting in trial signups and demo signups, getting in more people to hear what the product was. But once they got in, once they were in their trial, and once they had submitted their demo, there wasn't room for growth testing in the middle and towards the end of the funnel. So I think, again, communicating, having a shared understanding with the growth team of what is open for testing, and maybe that changes quarterly, maybe that changes monthly, might be a little too much, but I think quarterly might be a good rhythm. I think having a shared understanding of what needs to change in order to be tested, and also explaining to the growth side of, well, here's how we work. Here's what's templatized. And I think Mops tends to push back on the testing because it causes change. And we're uncomfortable with changing things. And there's always that risk management of what if something breaks. So I think it all comes down to just being open and communicating and sharing with the other party of, here's our expectations of what can change. Here's how frequently. I think quarterly might be a good rhythm, but again, I haven't worked with growth very closely in a while. I think it depends on if it's sales-led or product-led motions. Experience more growth testing than sales-led, and you have to have the right tools in place. And that's a whole other Pandora's box if you want to get into what tools you need and how to roll those out.
I want to talk a bit about the role of ops, from being the support team to more like a strategic partner, right? So ops can easily get trapped in what I like to call, Chloe, is like a ticket taking mode. You were the first Mops hire at Localize and still managed to shape the GTM decisions at Localize, and you influenced strategy there and you moved the org forward. I know that. So for all of our viewers, help us understand, Chloe, like what actions or conversations helped you shift ops from execution support to a real solid strategic partner at the table?
When I joined Localize, they did not yet have a marketing automation platform in place. They hired their first Mops role because they wanted to put in place a marketing automation. So they had a mindset. They knew that marketing ops was needed because their existing marketing team, it was very small, didn't have the competencies to vet and to implement a system. So the challenge at Localize was less from moving from a ticket taker to strategic, but more so of what even is marketing operations. A lot of companies, a little less nowadays, but I remember companies thinking that marketing ops like was just emails or like making t-shirts for events. So what I did when I joined Localize is I created this marketing ops office hours that I did weekly or bi-weekly. And it was not closed. It wasn't just for the marketing team. It was for the entire organization. You open it up in Slack and say, hey, I'm doing a session on what is marketing ops. And I essentially taught people who came. There were a lot of people in product who actually came and were interested in this. Taught them of what is marketing operations. It's a very general term, but then we talked about campaign ops, platform operations, enablement. And so I love advising people to run office hour sessions. It also opens up the lines of communication, and it educates others on what you do and what you shouldn't be doing as marketing ops. And then once people start to understand the vastness that is marketing ops, you can tie in what you do, what your concrete actions are as marketing ops. So your technical roadmap of implementing marketing automation, building templates, building lead scoring, building life cycle. You tie each of those initiatives in to how it goes back to revenue. Why it does having a life cycle help with revenue? Why does lead scoring help with revenue? All of these things help show to the organization how marketing ops is a strategic impact maker and not just sends emails or makes t-shirts.
That in a lot of cases, that's what it has turned into. I think the hypocrisy is evident there. Can you tell a bit about the scaling marketing operations, Chloe? I've seen ops. I mean, I know this. Ops roles are extremely high pressure, and burnout, creeps in quite. And you're someone who's experienced both an in-house side of things and now with your independent consulting, you come in at an outside point of view, right? So you have seen both sides when you're in-house and now you're outside consultant. How do you structure your work or your team's work to stay productive without tipping into burnout? And what's the one boundary, Chloe, you want to share or like habit you want to share with our Mops viewers?
I actually did a presentation on this at Mopsapalooza of 2024 on how to scale your marketing ops teams. So if we have the ability to put like a speaker note, I can link to that. But how do you know when to scale your team? There are certain things that you need to have in place to know if your team is ready to scale. Some of them from the top of my head are, do you have a roadmap in place? Is the rest of the company growing? Is marketing growing? Because there should be a proportionate number of ops folks to marketers and sales reps. You're able to hit certain milestones in your roadmap. If you're using a project management tool, are you falling behind in your tickets? So there's a waterfall of questions that you can ask yourself to get to the question of, is it time to grow your marketing ops team? So I highly advise viewers to go watch that session. I also wrote a blog post about it. But then how do you prevent burnout? everyone does things differently. Everyone builds their days differently. I, as an independent consultant, I intentionally build time into my day to do things that bring me joy. And that changes based on the season of the year and the phase of life that I'm in. Right now, I intentionally build time into my days to network, to connect with other Europeans who are in marketing ops. I also factor in time away from a screen because we need the brain break. And then the other days of the week where I will build in time to learn something new. I am a lover of learning. One of the reasons why I really enjoy being a consultant is that I'm constantly learning from my clients new things. So I really intentionally, to prevent burnout, is to build my day to bring me joy. I have that flexibility as an independent consultant. However, if you are in-house, or when I was in-house, learning how to say no is a skill it's very difficult to learn, but it's a skill that I hope that everyone learns and practices it. It's easy to say no when you have plans in place. So going back to those waterfall questions of, do you have a roadmap in place? Are you hitting those milestones? If people are coming to you with questions out of left field, it's easier to say no when you have your roadmap that says, okay, you're asking me to do something that's not in the bandwidth right now. Here's what I'm doing. What can we remove? You really have to have plans in place that protect you from burnout. And if you are in burnout, then this is where I put on my mental health advocate side of going through burnout and getting laid off, is you have to reach out for people for help. There's support out there, and it's a shame how few people do reach out for help when they've reached that point. And you have to build your day in a way that protects you mentally from burnout.
I think I love that strategy about having time block on your calendar for the things that give you joy, and networking based on screens. It's great. I was reading an article yesterday about, 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, people used to leverage internet to be away from the real world, so, they would go into internet to do whatever, so that they don't have to think about the real world, right?
Now it's the opposite.
It's opposite now.
It's the opposite.
Exactly. It was like there was an article about like a lot of people are now signing to like art classes, like painting classes, like hiking tours, because they're just so tired of being on screen all the time. I've heard restaurants who are enacting a policy where if you submit your phone when you enter in, they give you 5% discount, 10% discount, because they want people to enjoy their meals versus not really enjoying the meal and being on their phone.
Yeah. When the weather is nicer, I spend time during the day in my garden. I have a little vegetable plot where this summer I grew tomatoes and green beans and chives. And so I explicitly take longer lunch breaks and go to the garden center and see what else I can plant.
Nice.
And pick my tomatoes. And so it's interesting to see the shift now that AI is growing, but people are also growing away from computer screens because it's constant, it's everywhere. And I've also taken up painting classes, and I have creative things I do with my kids on the weekend just to get away from the screen.
From the screen. Yeah, excellent. I think it's going to be more and more as 2026 rolls in, 2027 rolls in, where people are extremely tired of being on screen all the time. You talked about creativity, right? So my next question is about creativity back into operations. Ops isn't usually seen as a creative space, but you're through the nice session at Mops last month, blend gamification with your operation problem solving, and I know people loved it. So I have to ask you, Chloe, what pushed you to take such a creative approach to operations, and what's one practical way teams can use that mindset to make their day-to-day ops work both more effective and actually fun?
I think there's a little story here I need to tell of how did the throw the dice come to be. It actually started in early 2024. I was asked to be on a panel for a London event with 3 other women, and we talked about the evolution of marketing ops. And we sat on a stage with 4 different chairs, and we each had a microphone. And it was great, but it was boring. It was boring. They were canned questions. We already knew what we were going to say. It kind of also felt like the audience even knew what we were going to say. And so Mopsapalooza 2024 came around, and these 3 other women and I had a great relationship, and we've known each other for years. And so we decided, well, we wanted to do something at Mopsa that was kind of like a panel-ish. And we decided to keep the same theme of different, and on a panel, there's different categories that you talk about. And ultimately, at a panel, people want your advice on how to do certain things. And so we gamified it and literally got a large blow up dice, and each side of the die was a different category. And so instead of our moderator asking us questions, we would throw the dice into the audience, and they would pick the category, and then they would ask us the question. But we put some fun categories on there. Like there was Pictionary, Mops Pictionary, or like a career advice question, or charades. That was the great one. So we really wanted to change things up. We wanted to be different. We wanted to stick out. And so we wanted to turn a boring panel, a boring marketing ops conversation into something more fun. And so that's something that I try and do through my client work, and that I try to do through my client work is I try to be unique, and I try to be memorable. There's a great saying, I believe, I hope I don't mess it up, is people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you say it. That's why throw the dice at Mopsapalooza worked so well. Is I don't think we gave any groundbreaking advice, but we made marketing ops fun. People now know what customer attribution is if you ever get it in a Pictionary card or in a charades card, because they had to see someone act it out. I try and be memorable and be myself and be human. We're all humans behind the technology. And that's something that I'm intentional with, is I try and make a boring topic more lighthearted and communicate it in a way especially when I'm talking to non-tech people. When you're talking to your marketing generalist and you're trying to explain how to use the MAP or how to use the CRM, as I try and make it fun. It's not always easy, but people remember how you say things and not necessarily what you said. And so it'll stick with them.
That's great perspective. I think we're at the end of it now, Chloe. That was an amazing conversation. Things you talked about, from connecting data systems to scaling campaigns without burning yourself out or your team out. Your insights are a game changer for marketing ops team, Chloe. And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise today. Your approach seems very effective and creative, which is inspiring. Especially coming from a Mops person. So for our listeners, if you want to learn more from Chloe, check her out on social media. We would love to hear what's your one takeaway that you're going to apply to your team after listening, Chloe. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.